2017, we have this entire group, this entire movement of quote-unquote Pan-Africanist. We have this entire movement of people who work on this agenda of more African than thou, who are quick to call anybody from Serena Williams to Jim Brown an Uncle Tom or a coon or jigaboo or anything else under the sun because they hold a different political, social, economic, any other belief than them. These individuals do not have their own agenda. These individuals do not have their own achievements. These individuals do not have their own economic plan for people in the African American community. The only thing that they do is criticize. The only thing that they do is push this line item that if you do not smell like incense all the time and don't take baths, walk around stinking, that somehow you are not pro-black enough, that somehow you are not African enough for them. But you have to ask yourself the question, well, what makes you so quote-unquote African? Because I know people from the continent. You know, my sister's husband is from Nigeria. We had a bunch of Ghanaians at the house last night, and they don't talk about Pan-Africanism. They don't talk about Africanism. They don't talk about even nationalism. They talk about tribe. So when I see you walking around with a Kemet cloth on from Egypt, and you got on a Ashanti rag, and then you're speaking some Kwanzaa stuff that's in Swahili from Zaire, what are you talking about? You look foolish. You don't know what the hell you're talking. It's like somebody walk around with some Adidas shoes on and some Nike pants and a Reebok shirt and an Under Armour hat. You look like a dang fool. The people who created many of these things were some of the major slave traders in Africa. The Ashanti in Rwanda sold more black people into slavery than anybody else. And they took the money that they got from the British to sell us into slavery to buy weapons from the Europeans, to enslave more Akan people, to build their empire. And you're walking around with their symbols on. You see people walk around with Adinkra symbols on, not knowing if they're from that tribe or not. You see people walking around with Igbo and Yarumba symbols, not understanding the history. So if you're going to be Pan-African, quote unquote, you have to start with being African. You have to know the history that you're seeking to teach other people. Because if you're not able to know that history, all you're doing is doing American Negro colonialism. You're not seeking to get closer to Africa. You're only seeking to turn Africa into America. You want to turn Lagos into Detroit. You want to turn Nairobi into Decatur. That's what your real agenda is. That's what your real plan is. You're no better than the Europeans. And if you're not going to be any better than the European, if you're not going to be any different than the Europeans, then leave our African brothers and sisters out of it. Because you know what? If you don't know about Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Kitswana, if you don't know the actual agenda of Gaddafi and Hosni Mubarak, if you don't know anything else about Mandela than the fact that he went to prison, if you don't even know what nations there are in Africa, you are not a Pan-Africanist. Pan-Africanism cannot start in America. It has to start in Africa. And all you're really seeking is to be interesting by being different. Because you know what? I'm not like the rest of the Negroes. I am different than them. And that's what you're really doing, because you have no interest in the animism of the natural African religions. You have no interest in the idol worship of the natural African religions and culture. You're no better than the Europeans if you do not become completely entrenched. Don't tell me 4 or 5 words in a different language that you found out about and you heard somewhere, you read on a Cracker Jack box. Read me a sentence. Read me a book. Become fluent in the language. Become fluent in the history. Because otherwise, you're no different than those who seek to colonize us. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Call in 404-892-2703. We will be back after the break. Welcome back. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. And before the break, we were talking about this issue of these Hotep hustlers. And the reason I call them Hotep hustlers is because they do not teach actual African traditions. They don't teach actual African religion. They don't teach actual African history. They teach you mysticism. They teach you some strange form of almost voodoo. Because if you actually wanted to know about the history of Africa, you could just download a book. You could just look at the 1897 massacre in Benin. You could look at the British sacking of If. You can look at the history of the Gold Coast or the Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire. You can find out about the Zulu massacre. They don't want you to actually know that. They want you to believe in burning incense. They want you to believe in things which is not. This is the funniest thing that I've heard over the holiday break. I heard a brother talking to me about polygamy, and he ain't got no job. Look, the whole idea behind polygamy is you get to have as many women as you can support. So any woman who has to go to work, that's not polygamy. Now you pimping, brother. Now you mastered the game. I ain't knocking you for that. I'm not hating on you for that. If you can get 3-4 women to pay all your bills, then more power to you, my brother. But don't call that polygamy. That's not polygamy. What that is pimping. Now, what's pimping? But if you are sitting around somewhere and you got 3-4 women going to work to pay your bills, you're not a polygamist. You're a pimp. And so they will tell these women that, well, in the African tradition, in our society, what we do is a man must have a large family. Like, no, that's not how it works. The king has a large family. You know, if you were to transport that idea to America, well, I'm a lawyer. I have a radio show. You know, I'm an upstanding member of the community. I'll get 3, 4, 5 wives. Obama is a constitutional law professor, the president of the United States of America. He'll get about 30 wives. You are a janitor at Waffle House. You don't get a wife. Not being mad at you, not hating on, not saying that blue-collar jobs are a bad thing. But if you want to tell people about these African traditions, well, the people at the bottom of the totem pole don't get the same benefits as the people at the top of the totem pole. So we have this perverted idea of our history, this perverted idea of what makes us us. You can't tell me that you're a Pan-Africanist and you haven't even paid the money to do a genealogy of yourself to find out where your people came from. You'll just tell me, well, I'm black, so I'm an African. Well, Vijay Singh is blacker than most of us, and he's from India. You got folks out here blacker than anybody in this room, and they're Aborigines from Australia. You got plenty of black, dark people from South America, from Dominican Republic and Dominicana. So find out where you are from first before you come around telling me that somebody is or is not black enough for you. And the truth is, it's a huge hustle. It's a huge way for people to line their pockets, making YouTube video and Facebook posts, giving speeches and teaching classes, and you ain't got no doctorate. You ain't got no bachelor's. You ain't got no master's. You ain't got a high school diploma. Talking about you woke. Well, guess what? I don't need to be woke because in the words of my wife, I don't need to be woke because I was never asleep. My mom was born in Haiti under Papa Doc, under a dictator. My dad was born in Waverly Hall, Georgia. If you never heard of it, that's because it's the most country place in Georgia. In 1932. I don't need to be woke. I was born woke. And these people out here telling you that you need to somehow qualify for blackness are the main ones acting as the hands of the people who want to keep you in bondage, who want to keep you in chains, who don't want you to be better than the position that you're currently in. And because of that, we have to think about the people that we consider to be leaders. Find out their background, find out their pedagogy. Find out if what they're teaching you is more about uplifting you than uplifting their own pockets. Gonna go to the phone lines. We got Gadon on line one. Gadon?
Yo, my brother, you are smoking, in the words of Jerry Smoking B. The reality of our ignorance and confusion has to do with source information. Source information tends to allow us to do research so we can identify our ancestry. Many of you have just finished worshiping the god of the Greeks and the Romans, Janus, because you celebrate this so-called New Year, not having your own culture. Have you been to Africa?
You know, I was scheduled to go to Africa, to Morocco last January, but unfortunately, because my clients like to commit crimes, I was unable to do so, but I will be going this year.
All right, so I have been to Nigeria, lived among the Yoruba and the Igbo for a month. In essence, what you're saying is correct. Unfortunately, the native Aboriginal people tend to like the clothing, the style of the colonizers more than they do their own creative power and source information from and material from their own land. I was floored by that. One of the native Nigerians told me I was more African than they were, and I had just gotten off the plane. The reality of colonialism and the colonized mind is real, but we also have to, that's why the biblical story, and for those who don't believe it, end up being demagogues in the community, because when you have a mishmash of cultural infusions from various source material, then you get these ideologues who claim, like some of the individuals that call the radio station, that they know this and that. They don't have a God consciousness. They claim they love the people. But in reality, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Pan-African, all they do is set themselves up to be a source of information and cultural identity when they don't know their own identity themselves, which is why, as a Hebrew, a Messianic Hebrew, I have source material, i.e. the Bible, that gives me specific information on my culture, the calendar, how my family should be set up, the whole nine. It's not for everybody. I'm not saying everybody should believe as I believe, but I am saying the unification of deity, culture, and ideology and source information comes from the not necessarily one source, but a myriad of sources, but yet you still have to have a foundation. So tribalism creates a cultural identification because we all come from a tribe, in your information and what you were pontificating about these individuals claiming to come from a tribe, at least they have some way of trying to trace their roots other than the white man, his genealogical search, which you cannot prove. Now, when I went to the law to verify and identify myself as a Hebrew, I was scorned and laughed at by Hebrews and Muslims and Negroes alike. They say, well, why do you have to go to the law to establish who you are? I did not. I knew who I was. I went to the law to establish for the world to know that I know who I am legally, just like when you get a passport, just like when you go.
But Gideon, realistically, Black Hebrews are from East Africa. They're from Somalia. They're from Ethiopia. They're from Upper Egypt, and the African slave trade happened in West Africa, from Ghana and from Congo, from Guinea and Guinea-Bissau, from Nigeria, those areas, Cote d'Ivoire. So wouldn't it make sense for you to, if you're saying you are a Black Hebrew, which is, the places where African slaves came from are as far from the places where the Black Hebrews were located as Georgia is from Mexico City in Mexico. So it would make sense if you're claiming to be a Black Hebrew for you to need to produce some proof, because I was probably one of the people laughing at you also.
Well, absolutely. I did produce proof. I went and got the document. I do now have that, but in reality, geographical location does not a Hebrew make. It is a philosophy, it is a cultural directive, and it is based on biblical ideology and commandments from the Creator himself. So
all right, we got to go to break. You have 5 seconds.
All right, conclusion, I would say you're spot on with these demagogue leaders profiting off the minds of simple people who haven't done research. And, of course, that's why I don't identify with them. I identify with the master and those who have chosen, and we'll find out who those are in the end.
All right, thank you, Gideon. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community, will be back after the break. Welcome back, News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community, Attorney Robert Patillo. We got a special guest coming up for you guys after the next break in the top of the hour. So we're going to try to get to the phone calls right now. We've got Gar from Decatur on line 1. Gar?
Yes, sir. Mr. Patello.
Yes, sir.
Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Thank you. Only problem I had with you said was you didn't name any names. I didn't hear any names. Who are some of these Pan-African or what you would call hustlers?
Well, the reason I didn't name any names, I thought about that, is why give them free press? Because if I name names, people are going to go to their Facebook page, they're going to go to their YouTube page, they're going to show up at the various speeches and seminars. And my question has always been, I don't know any Pan-Asianist out there. But meanwhile, Asian people have their own community in every city. They run their own businesses. They run everything. But they don't need people out here talking about the history of Asia. They just get out there and do it. I don't know any pan-Jewishist. They just get out there and run these banks and run the jewelry industry and run their communities, and they do it. I don't even know any pan-Arabist. The Arabs just come here and they work and they raise families and they run businesses.
You're saying
it's only us who are full of it.
You're saying all African Americans don't do those things.
No, not all African Americans. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay.
What I'm saying is these individuals who call themselves leaders, who call themselves Pan-Africanists, who quote unquote are talking about what they're going to do for the Black community and how we all need to be conscious and how folks ain't woke. The main ones ain't doing nothing.
Say this, but I can't think of nobody ever saying that. I mean, that sounds so 1960. I don't hear people saying that anymore.
There is a whole undercurrent
I
now.
Must be missing them because I don't hear them on TV. I don't see them on the radio. Where they at? I'm trying to figure out where they at.
The thing is, like, whenever you see an African American person step out of the plantation, step out of the box as far as there's somewhere to think.
That's what I want. Where do you find these?
You find that mostly.
I don't see them anymore.
Yeah, most of these people are internet trolls. That's what they do for a living. That's their full-time job. That if you were to tomorrow get a job with the federal government making $150,000 a year, $200,000 a year, and then marry your wife, buy a house, these people will hop right on the internet and call you Uncle Tom. And that's all that they do. That's their entire career.
Well, I'm fortunate. I guess I'm fortunate that I don't run into these people. I don't be looking for them. I don't run into them. And another thing, just the term Africa is a European name.
Absolutely.
In itself. You know, and most of Africa was tribal, like you said, which is very important. But the thing we also have to understand is that we came to America not like everybody else. Everybody else came here in a different manner than we came here, and then they put before us for over 400 years, God was white.
Mm-hmm.
Most Asians had to sit under that for 400 years where Jesus is God and he looked white. He got his crown of thorns, and they had to sit up under that for 500 years. The Chinese didn't have to sit up under that, and the Asians didn't have to sit up under that either. But we sat up under the Caucasian image of Jesus for almost 400 years.
And
we having a hard time saying, wait a minute, Jesus wasn't white. You know, he wasn't white. We don't know God in the flesh. No, God shouldn't be in the flesh. God is too big to be in one place. A lot of times we try to put God in one little place. God is too big to be in one place.
But one of the crazy things is in the Bible, it tells us how God looked. In Revelation, it tells us skin of bronze, hair of wool. We all know the parts in it.
No,
and we let people tell us
how God looked.
Yeah, well, it tells us how Jesus looked. And we let people tell us that this light-skinned, Caucasian, long-haired is the person. Believe us. Don't believe what the words in the Bible say, but believe the rest of the Bible. And we let people convince us of that.
And the thing about the Bible is translated, transliterated, revised. It'll tell you right on there, translated, transliterated, and revised over and over again. You know, you got the King James Version, you got the Gideon Version, you got different versions of the Bible, you know, and so we got to take that in consideration too. But the bottom line is, like you say, we got to be active. You know, we constantly got to be active because that's what life is all about, you know, having faith in God and keep on striving.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your call.
Thank you.
All right. We've got, our good friend. We got Joseph from Boston online too. Joseph
from Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Yes, sir. How are you?
Western Massachusetts. Berkshire County. Happy New Year's, attorney.
Oh, happy New Year, you too.
You notice I don't use your name Patello because I have a habit when I'm nervous, I can't roll the tongue. You know, I ain't got that Spanish language in me, you know.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, you know, the problem is, before, you got to let me make a point that to correct what a couple of callers you were saying last week about survival of fittest. It's not that. It's called natural selection. But to get to Pan-Africanism, you ever seen, you know, I like to go around the world to see the bigger picture and get you where I'm getting at, what's wrong with this Pan-Africanism, all that yang. Did you ever see Twilight Zone, attorney?
Yep.
There was a part, this guy, he was fed up with people. He couldn't stand people. And he wished he was the only one on earth. And, you know, his wish came through. And then he realized he needed people. He went to the grocery store, there's nobody there. He goes to the restaurant, there's nobody there. And he got so depressed, he decided to commit suicide because he can't find nobody. He's the only person on the earth. So he swallowed some pills. As he swallowed the pill, the telephone rang. You ever seen that one, attorney?
I do.
All right, well, here's what I'm getting at. I'm not suicidal or anything like that. But with this pineapple, I'll tell you what exactly the problem is. But, you know, I was fed up with a Negro talking about the same two leaders. No disrespect to Malcolm X and Malcolm X. They were great people. But there's a lot of great leaders. Not right up on the mountain to get away from these brainwashed Negroes. No disrespect. I love my black people. Until I listened to a talk radio, I fell asleep last week. I listened to Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. I go to Golden Station. So they had a professor from Northwestern University, Illinois, prestigious school for social science and stuff like that. And he was talking about W.E.B. Du Bois. He's in my top 5 of great people on earth. W.E.B. Du Bois did so much for black people. So much knowledge. He one of the first black social scientists. So much research he did. You don't hear these bourgeois egos or these so-called black leaders talk about a W.B. Du Bois. Another one, I'm listening to a Washington, D.C. station, and they talk about Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture. He's from the country of my birth, Trinidad. He's credited with a Black Power movement. You don't hear these bourgeois egos talking about Stokely Carmichael and the important role he played. But yet, they watch about it's a deliberate attempt. These bourgeois modern house egos are working for these white supremacists. That's why they deliberately don't talk about all
this is my issue, Joseph, though. When you start talking about modern-day house Negroes, what was the problem with the old house Negroes? They were slaves, too. It's not like they were living high on the hog. They were still in the same position as you. When you create this artificial separation in your own community, all you are doing is helping out the people. You're helping out the slave master by separating the house Negro from the field Negro. If the field Negro was working with the house Negro, then the house Negro can help effectualize change to the field Negro. What is the entire point of being against each other?
Let me make my point before you go on the break, attorney. I deal with facts, okay? First of all, in the 60s, you had Stokely Carmichael, you had the core, you had Snake, you had the Black Panthers. All we got is the same people now. I went and protested the shutdown of all these black stations in New York. Do you know New York don't have no black talk radio, but WLIV, which play WBRS, which mainly play music, and they don't let me on because it's still to let an intellectual conscious black man that don't sell out on the radio. They shut down all the black radio. I went to kill Noble when he was speaking, like righteous, conscious black man that never sold out. The longest talk TV radio station show in New York. He passed away a couple of years ago. I like to use library. I'm reading a book of my likes and use right now. The problem is these, like Carter G. Wilson said, you teach a Negro to go to the back door, you don't have to tell him no more. He'll deliberately go to the back door. We punish our black children for trying to learn facts, like trying to learn the truth. And real quick, because of segregation, like Malcolm X was right, we shouldn't force integration. Let things flow. You talk about the Chinese, you talk about the Koreans, everybody has their own community. Because the white man and certain groups are going to sound anti-Semitic, deliberately put these modern-day house Negroes there to dumb down the black population.
All right, we got to go to a break, Joseph.
Can I finish with the last week comment, attorney?
All right, we got to go to a break.
Can I finish real quick?
Well,
you talk about the Aborigines. They're not black people, what y'all call black. They originated from southern India. True DNA.
All right, we got to go to a break, Joseph. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Welcome back, News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. This is Attorney Robert Padilla, 2 o'clock hour. So I'd like to bring you guys some new information, new guests. In studio, we have the prince of Pan-Africanism. We have the leader of the new Black Awakening. Someone called earlier, Gar called from Decatur, saying that, well, who are these new Pan-African leaders? Who are these new people who are talking about blackness, talking about our history, talking about our heritage? This is one of the young brothers doing so. We have Dr. Umar Johnson.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Peace and love to Atlanta. Glad to be back in the city.
All right, Dr. Johnson, you know, it's amazing you being here on the same day that we're doing this show. Reached out to you, sent you a text message. I know you got probably 10,000 texts in the last couple of days.
Yes.
But I'm glad you were able to respond and glad that you could be here. What brings you to Atlanta today?
Atlanta today, I'm here to celebrate Kwanzaa. It's the 7th day of Kwanzaa, the first day of the new year. I always try to come to Atlanta and present my information and platform as both a Pan-Africanist and a school psychologist. I have a pretty unique, what would you say, niche within the black community. There's not a lot of black school psychologists. Mm-hmm. We're less than 1% of all school psychologists in America. And as a result of that, when it comes to special education, ADHD, the learning disability, psychiatric medication, and on the other side, I'm a former school principal. So when it comes to school law, discipline, grading, there's a lot of expertise I have that can help the parents here in Atlanta and throughout the country. And then on the other side, as it relates to Pan-Africanism, black unity, black empowerment, black politics, the condition of the race, that's another side of my message. So I blend both of those together. The last time I was in Atlanta was a year ago, last Kwanzaa. So it's been almost 365 days to the day. And so I'm glad to be back because I get a lot of support in Atlanta.
All right, and so today you have an event going on at the Shrine of the Black Madonna.
Yes, sir.
Something that anybody who's in the conscious movement in Atlanta knows about. But can you tell people about what's going on there today?
Yes, indeed. It is my final Kwanzaa Power Lecture. We began in Baltimore, and then we went to Jacksonville, Florida, and then day before yesterday, Detroit, Michigan. And now we're here for the last and final lecture of the Kwanzaa season, first lecture of the new year. I'm going to talk about the changing of the guard from President Obama to Donald Trump, what black people can expect to see. I'm going to deal with the Donald Trump's new Secretary of Education, Ms. Betsy DeVos, and her plans to continue the shutdown movement of public education, the charterization of the inner city public school districts. I'm going to talk about the weapons of mass destruction in public school, which is your special education, your ADHD, my upcoming Black College and Consciousness Tour for 11 to 17-year-old boys and girls that will be leaving from Atlanta. We'll be leaving from Atlanta this year, June 28th to July 14th. I'm also working on a repatriation task force to Africa, where we're going to take approximately 50 to 75 brothers and sisters to the mother continent to live for 90 days. And we're going to research and investigate that particular society, put our funds together, purchase a large piece of land, about 100 to 200 acres, and start building an independent community in Africa for brothers and sisters from the Western Hemisphere who want to go back home.
And, and that's the part that I'm most interested in, because the beginning of the show for the first hour, I talked about what I call the Hotep hustlers.
Yes, sir.
Which are these individuals who, you'll see them on YouTube, you see them on Facebook and social media, talking about, well, I'm a Pan-Africanist. I believe in our motherland, our traditions, but don't know nothing about the traditions. They don't. They know nothing about the tribes. They know nothing about the language. They'll have on, I said earlier, they'll have on a kente cloth from Rwanda, and they'll be talking Swahili from Zaire, and then they'll have on a amulet from Egypt, and they'll just say, "Well, I am Hotep," and that's what they use as their belief system. But from somebody who comes from an educational background, someone who has a doctorate, who has studied these issues, who has been to the continent, when people are trying to get in touch with their roots, what should they actually be looking at? What should they be thinking about when they get into this sphere?
From the platform of Pan-Africanism and Garveyism, I would say that we welcome and appreciate brothers and sisters who even have a marginal level of understanding of black culture and consciousness, because they could very simply be anti-African. So even if they may not necessarily have mastered the different aspects of that African culture and consciousness, we still appreciate that. Because one thing that another psychologist said, Dr. Wade Nobles, who's an elder, he said that we're the Pan-African people in the United States. We're the one people in the world who are a conglomerate of all the different ethnicities across the country. So within us, you may have South Africa. Within us, you may have Central Africa, East Africa, West Africa. So as the Pan-African people, I think it's perfectly acceptable for brothers and sisters to mix and blend the different cultural maneuvers throughout the continent as they become to bring about that awakening. Because I think our unique niche as African Americans is being able to engage the entire continent. I just came from a 30-day tour of South Africa. I do it every year. We go to Cape Town, we go to Durban, Joburg, Soweto, Zululand. We go all over. And I think one of the advantages I have as a brother coming from the West, a descendant of enslaved Africans, is I can embrace the Xhosa in the Zulu. When I go to Nigeria, I can embrace the Yoruba as well as the Igbo. When I go to Kenya, I was in Kenya for the first time, speaking at a Pan-African conference, Jomo Kenyatta University, a month before last, and I'm able to embrace the Kikuyu as well as the Maasai. So I think for us from the West, our unique contribution to the Pan-African struggle is that we do not have to get engrossed in the tribalism of the continent.
Well, that's part of it. I agree with you on that. But then when you have people who have a 1,000-year protracted war that's been going on between these tribes, where one party has enslaved the other, and then the other party went right back and burned their capital to the ground, and then we come in as African Americans, often with that colonial Western egoism, and thinking that a lot of times Americans come in and we think we're going to teach Africanism to Africans.
I think that's a bad approach.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue.
It's a Eurocentric approach, and I think we have examples on the continent where that has failed. I was in Liberia a couple years ago to speak, In Liberia, you have the Americo-Liberians who came back, okay, to their motherland after having been enslaved in America to create a new reality. And what did they do? They failed to recognize that they were indoctrinated with the white supremacy consciousness, and they came back to Liberia and tried to become the new colonizers in Africa. So we've seen the same thing in Sierra Leone, where American Africans come back home and think because they've been under this Western white man that they have a right to dictate to the continent. I don't believe that at all. I think we're all Africans. I think we're all equals. But then you also have the opposite in play, where brothers and sisters from the continent may feel that they're superior to Africans from the West because they did not descend from enslaved Africans. So I think it's important that we all come with a degree of humility. I think it's important that we all recognize that we're all African and we all have a role to play in this struggle.
All right, we're going to go to a break and get to the phone calls. Phone lines are completely jam-packed. We're going to get to you guys after the break. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Welcome back, News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. As you guys know, at the 2 o'clock hour, even in 2017, our wonderful producer, father, pillar of the community, Darnell Morris, becomes DJ Dirty D and likes to play the trappiest of the trap and rappiest of the rap music. This year only for one song in the Ratchet Hour, or the Ratchet Song of the Hour. Still in studio, we have Dr. Umar Johnson. And Dr. Johnson, I wanted to talk to you a little bit, transitioning from that, about the way that the music influences our young people. Because a lot of us who are in our 30s and our 40s, we look at our young folks, and they look like they're in a daze, like they're in a haze all the time. How do you think the music that they listen to influences and kind of dictates their behavior?
3 points on that. Number one, I think one of the greatest parental crises we have in Black America, and I would say the Pan-African community, because I see this in Africa, I just saw it in the Caribbean, I see it in Canada, I see it in the UK, I see it in South America, and that is the lack of Black parental supervision as it relates to the content of the music that our children listen to. I'm amazed that Black parents allow 7, 8, 9-year-old children uncontrolled access to iTunes, uncontrolled access to YouTube, okay? And, of course, pornography is another growing issue amongst our children, too. The unsupervised access to that. They shouldn't even have access to it. But sticking with the music, we need to understand something. Music and images condition the unconscious. Study any great revolution in history. They had great use of sound, great use of image. Those are the two languages of the unconscious. Whoever controls the music and controls the movies controls the youth, period. Period. Music and imagery is more profound than education. The music industry has a greater impact and influence over Black children than the school system does. And so does the music industry. Now, when we talk about gangster rap, which in my opinion is nothing more than a marketing program for mass incarceration. I'm going to say that again. Gangsta rap is nothing more than an advertising scheme for mass incarceration. Every gangsta rap song, it doesn't matter who's the rapper, where they're rapping from, what they're rapping about, or how they deliver, it is sexual exploitation of women. It is materialistic consumption. It is smoking marijuana or selling drugs. And it is killing other Black men. I don't care what rap song it is. It has those 4 deconstructive, degenerative elements within it. And our children are being conditioned with this. Now, the rappers would argue what? You cannot blame me for gangs. They were here before rap. You cannot blame me for crime. It was here before rap. I agree with you. I'm not holding you responsible for the existence of crime. I'm not holding you responsible for the existence of negativity in the Black community, but I do hold you responsible for the fact that you advertise it, you promote it, and you give it a positive veneer. You have made crime popular. You didn't create crime, but you have made it popular. Culture and art has a bidirectional influence. We influence our artists influence us. But for an artist to say, I'm only reflecting my reality without taking responsibility for the fact that you help create the reality through your music, I think to me is not being a man and a woman of your word. Stand up and take responsibility for the fact that you do influence the negativity that exists in our community.
All right, we have to move through these subjects fast. I know you have to leave. You have the speech coming at 5, or coming at 4 o'clock at the Shrine of Black Madonna.
Yes, well, the doors open up at 4. We start at 6.
All right, the doors open up at 4, so I want you guys to get out there. Don't turn the radio show off. get dressed while you're listening to the radio with being Dr. Umar Johnson.
And it is sold
make
out.
sure you
So
get
if you don't have a ticket, unfortunately, you won't be able to get in. Now, what we will do at 7 o'clock, we'll look and see if any ticket holders have not shown. At that point, we will allow people to pay at the door. But as of right now, we're completely oversold.
All right, and you're going to be back with Dr. Bernice King coming up also.
Yes, shout out to Dr. Bernice King, daughter of the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I've been invited to participate on her upcoming panel on race relations in America at the Martin Luther King Jr. Center here in Atlanta on Monday, January the 16th. Dr. Umar Johnson will be there along with Senator Bernie Sanders, John Kasich, and others. I believe the mayor of Atlanta, Mr. Kareem Reed, will be there. Mr. Kasim Reed, he'll be in the house as well.
All right, and on this this topic of the show today, which is these Hotep hustlers.
Yes, sir.
Which is these individuals who sell a certain brand of Pan-Africanism, which is only really meant to line their own pockets because they're not encouraging you to go back to Africa. They're not encouraging you to learn anything about Africa. They're teaching you this kind of perverted image of what Pan-Africanism is. What would be your primary message to the beginner Pan-African, the person who's just trying to understand their history, their heritage, and trying to get into the movement?
Well, firstly, to clarify, within the Black consciousness community, the Pan-Africanists, we are actually a minority as it relates to ideology. So within this consciousness movement, you have the Hebrews, you have Nation of Islam, you have Nawapians, you have Moors, you have your Black socialists, you have your spiritualists, you have your New Age community, and of course you have your diet, nutrition, and vegan community. So there's a lot of houses within the Black consciousness nation. The Pan-African house is actually a minority house. I think me with my work and other Garveyites and other Pan-Africanists, we've done a lot to raise the emphasis on the red, black, and green, to bring back the culture of revolutionary Pan-African nationalism. And I think with my work in particular, being as popular as I am within the consciousness movement, we've done a lot to bring brothers and sisters back over to their African identity. But most of the ideologies under the umbrella of Black consciousness do not represent Pan-Africanism. So we do want to clarify that. Now, under the umbrella of Black consciousness, I would tell brothers and sisters who are novices in this movement is to make sure that you're wasting your time studying information that is practically relevant to the Black experience today. What am I saying? I'm saying that we are in a state of crises right now. Okay, you look at our schools, you look at our political reality, you look at our economic devastation, you look at the current status of the Black family. We're in a state of crisis. There's a lot you can learn about Africa. There's a lot you can learn about Black people. There's a lot you can learn about Black consciousness. But so what you have to do is you have to sift through all the information, all the books, all the lectures, and find that which is relevant. I think for me, one of the reasons why our brothers and sisters support Dr. Umar Johnson is I stick to the practical. I'm all about the practical. I'm not really interested in spending too much time on history, only as it relates to now. I'm not too much interested in spending a whole bunch of time on spirituality. I do study spirituality, okay, but not to the exclusion of dealing with our political economic time of day. So if it's not relevant, if it's not practical, if it's going to be intellectual masturbation, I'm not interested in the conversation.
And one of the things I think annoys people, we got to go to a break, is this idea of the more Hotep than thou movement.
Yes.
Whereas, anybody who does anything which steps out of line, all of a sudden you see it online, see it on the internet. I'm looking on the internet right now. You're a coon, you're a Tom, you're a jigaboo, you're everything under the sun except for being an authentic Black man. But why? What we for some reason cannot accept. Well, maybe someone's Black reality is different than yours. Maybe their Black reality is I'm going to work at a job for 30 years, marry one woman, have 3 children, send them to college, and then retire and go on vacation. Maybe that is their way of being authentically Black, and by doing so, they are no less Pan-African or they're no less conscious than you are. And we have this concept of wokeness. Well, you're not woke, my brother. Well, maybe my woke is different than your woke. So we're going to talk more about that after break. Going to get to the phone lines. I know I just told y'all we were going to get to the phone lines, and I did not. We are actually going to get to the phone lines this time. Call in 404-892-2703. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Welcome back, News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Darnell, what was that? The trap remix of Maria? I don't think I've ever heard that version of Ave Maria before. And we all know we do not listen to Beyonce to hear her singing. Her singing is not the best parts of Beyonce. Nobody's going to listen to a full a cappella concert of Beyonce. That's not what she is here for. She's an entertainer more so than a singer. Still in the studio, we have Dr. Umar Johnson, the Prince of Pan-Africanism. So, Dr. Johnson, we were talking during the break about this idea of social media and Black consciousness, because social media now has given a platform to people who normally would not have a platform. Like you were saying, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and we were having a debate on the future of African-American people, of people in the diaspora. You would assume you have a PhD, I have a law degree. The other person might have a master's in something. People have actual qualifications.
Yes.
Now it is just somebody who has incense and dashiki, and they'll think of themselves as a Pan-African leader. So how has this affected the community?
I would say the benefit of it is it does allow various different perspectives to be explored within a consciousness medium that was largely dominated by Black intellectual elites. So the benefit is you get to hear the grassroots voice, the grassroots perspective. I appreciate it. The detriment is that now we have undervalued the scholar who actually comes to the table with the legitimate research experience that comes with having a PhD. And so when I look at myself, I have a legitimate doctorate. Dr. Wesley Muhammad, he has a legitimate doctorate. There's a few others who have legitimate doctorates, but most of us now don't have doctorates where, neighborhood self-taught scholars. And I think there's a place for that. It doesn't bother me at all, but I do think it makes it more difficult for brothers and sisters who are trying to come into consciousness to find qualitative people whom they can trust to guide them down the right path.
Well, I think one of the big issues that in the Black community, we've always had this issue of charlatans. Or, we had the Black preacher who's lining his pockets and he's selling out the church to the same gentrifiers and colonialists. We've had the quote-unquote civil rights leaders who didn't have the best interest of the Black community in mind. They had the interest of the people who were paying them in mind. And now we have the same thing going on now with some of the Pan-Africans, some of the people in the conscious quote-unquote movement who aren't actually looking out for the best interests of individuals. They realize that, well, if I get more views on YouTube, then I get more money in my pocket. So I'm going to throw out this red meat for what people actually believe in or what people want to hear versus putting out actual knowledge for people for things that are going to help individuals.
Without question. I also think, and this conversation is so timely because I just announced that I'm going to be hosting an International Black Consciousness Convention, which is probably going to be in New York, but may possibly be in Detroit or Atlanta. I think it's time for all the different houses of Black consciousness, the Pan-Africanists, the Black nationalists, the Hebrews, the Moors, the Nawapians. Everyone needs to come together, and we need to create a platform based on principles of unity and solidarity, because there's a lot of conflict that has arisen within the Black consciousness movement, okay? And I'm not innocent from it myself, okay, so to speak. But it's because we have a lot of young people who are coming into Black consciousness, and what we don't need to do is lay down a bad example where they see us competing and fighting and strifing with each other, which appears to be the same thing that they're trying to get away from on the street corner.
Absolutely. We're going to go to the phone lines. Y'all act right. So Steve's been on hold for an hour and 24 minutes. So we're going to go to Steve in Chicago. Steve?
Hey, greetings, Counselor. How we doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing great. Greetings to Dr. Umar.
Greetings.
Yes, sir. Now, Attorney Patillo, to be fair, when you first came on the airwaves, you were talking about Hotep hustlers, and you were painting a very general and broad stroke with that. So as you were speaking initially, I thought for sure that Dr. Umar Johnson was one of those Hotep hustlers that you were talking about. But since he's been on the airwaves, it seems as though you were talking about basically everyone else but him.
Well, it's not that I was talking about everybody but Dr. Umar, but what I was talking about is these individuals who don't have a plan. These individuals who don't have an actual solution. Their entire pedagogy, their entire doctorate is in blaming white people for everything that exists without putting any meat behind it. There's no meat and bones behind what they're saying. There's no plan behind what they're saying. There's no LLC. There's no nonprofit. There's no 501c behind what they're saying. All they are saying is, well, white people are doing this to us, and let's be mad about it just to get views on YouTube or to get people to show up at a lecture.
Yes, I understand where you're coming from now. But again, the conscious community, as Dr. Umar spoke to, is a very broad community. I do disagree, Dr. Umar, that the Pan-Africanist community is a minority. In reality, globally, the Pan-Africanist movement is the majority. We just are not efficiently linked up with, in unity with the other Pan-Africanists around the globe. But that movement, of course, has been in place for well over 50 or more years now. And I think the biggest challenge in all of this is understanding what consciousness is all about. There's levels of consciousness. You can be fully conscious, you can be subconscious, you can be unconscious. And so we have to now define what level of consciousness is each and every one of us at. And based on that level of consciousness, then there's only so much we can expect from that individual. So even with this internet situation, we got to talk about the beef. It's already out there. And I personally, want us to discuss exactly what happened. I don't think that it's good for us.
But Steve, this is the thing, that if you want drama and everything else, you can watch Housewives. You can go to World Star Hip Hop for that. You can go to every other outlet on earth to hear about drama. But
I heard drama from Dr. Umar Johnson YouTube. I heard drama from
True,
General
but you can
YouTube.
you can hear drama anywhere. So why not take this opportunity? We only have 2 hours once a week to talk about things that are going on in the black community. So do we want to talk about some drama during that period of time, or do we want to talk about things that are...
I'm not trying to feed the drama, attorney. Please forgive me. Let me clarify. What I am trying to do is speak to conflict resolution. Brothers, let us be clear. There is no I in we unless we're playing video games, period. So whatever it is that we're speaking to as it pertains to our people, it has to be from a we, us, collective approach. This is where the conflict is not being resolved, because we have too many people talking about I, me. And as a result, then, of course, naturally, ego is going to get involved, because all of us have ego.
All right, Steve, I'm going to cut you off and let Dr. Johnson hop in, all right?
Yes, indeed. A couple points. And I do agree with my brother that the Pan-African philosophy, which I preach on and teach on, is the oldest formal political ideology for black people. But when you look at the black consciousness community, particularly in the United States, as it relates to our youth, and of course, the youth are not the only part of the movement, but when you look at the young black consciousness movement in these United States, Pan-Africanism as an ideology is in the minority amongst the youth. But I do want to say this, and I do agree with my brother, we do have to achieve that degree of conflict resolution, which is one of the reasons why I, under the Team Pan-African banner, will be hosting that first International Black Consciousness Convention, so we can come up with a protocol for how we can effectively deal with conflict resolution. But I do want to say this. I think the community, and I think this goes to your point as well as our brother on the phone, the consciousness community has to create, and this is why we're doing that conference, a platform as well as a protocol with a list of criteria. Because when you talk about the Hotep hustler phenomenon, it is real. Is everyone lecturing a Hotep hustler? Of course not. Are some of them are? No question. And if someone was to ask me right now, what separates you, Dr. Umar? You're the most requested of all. How can you claim to not be a Hotep hustler? And I can answer that. For me, anyone who's speaking to the consciousness of African people who don't have programs in action and solutions on the table should never be allowed to speak before our people. If you cannot tell me what you are working on right now to help solve a problem in our community, you should be given no platform or microphone. So if someone was to ask me, well, give me yours, Dr. Umar, I'll give you several. Number one, we have the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy for Black Boys that we're working on, that we've raised $700,000 for. In fact, tomorrow here in Atlanta, I will be visiting schools right here in Atlanta to see whether or not I can put the school here in Atlanta. I'll be back up in Detroit in a couple weeks to look at the schools there we finally got access to. So I've already committed that we will have a school in 2017 and that the school will be opening on the anniversary of the Nat Turner War, August the 21st of 2018. So number one, it's the school. Number two, in San Diego, the 27th and 28th of this month, I will be hosting the third training conference, not the first, the third, for the National Independent Black Parent Association, an organization we started in May to organize black parents in every city and school district in America to fight against racism in the 7 key areas of special education, discipline, policy, finance, social support, homeschooling, and parent advocacy. Number three, as I mentioned earlier, right here from Atlanta, June 28th to July the 12th, I will be hosting my second, not the first, the second Black College and Consciousness Tour for 11 to 17-year-old black boys and girls. Every Tuesday morning, I host a free black parent teleconference for African-American parents. Any question about your child, education, or mental health, you can get free answers from Dr. Umar Johnson every Tuesday from 6 until 8. We've been doing this for over 3 years now. Every year, I host a conference to Africa for brothers and sisters who've never been, 2 weeks on the continent. And then I have the repatriation task force. So I've just given you 6 or 7 different projects that I have been working on and am working on, not to mention my expertise as a psychologist. Whenever I speak, I help and empower parents.
All right, got to go to a break. We got Dr. Johnson for one more segment so you guys get the phone calls in, even the phone lines are jam-packed. Call in. We're going to try to get a couple more calls in after the break. Also, anybody who uses Hotep Hustler, give me credit for it. I thought of that. Give me credit for that. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Welcome back, News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Still in studio, we have Dr. Umar Johnson, the Prince of Pan-Africanism. During the break, we were talking about this concept of intellectual masturbation. What do we mean by that? We don't mean that you're somewhere watching tastyblacks.com or Pornhub or caramel BBWs or whatever you might be into. We're talking about people who are unable. I learned those from Darnell also. All those things. But we're talking about individuals who are so busy being caught up in what they know, being caught up in being able to recite the entire history of anything under the sun, but don't actually put that into action, can't actually translate that into commerce, can't translate that into anything that benefits anybody. Like, yes, it is great that you can tell me every single original member of Earth, Wind, and Fire and all of the backup singers and and everybody who ever played trumpet and saxophone, but what does that have to do with the advancement of a group, the advancement of a people? And we don't see this in other groups. We don't see Asians talking about this. You know, I always use that as the comparator to the African-American community. When they come, they get jobs, they work, they own businesses, they send their kids to law school and to medical school, and they become astrophysicists. Tell me who is the Pan-Asian leader? It doesn't exist. Who is out here giving speeches and lectures on the grandeur and the glory of Asia? Nobody. They just do it. And they get the job done. And we sit around intellectually masturbating so much that at the end of the speech or the lecture or the book or whatever else it is, we feel satisfied, but not fulfilled. So Dr. Johnson, tell us what do people need to do to not get seduced by the dark side? You know, Rogue One just came out. How do people stop from getting seduced by this dark side of being knowledgeable but not actually being useful?
Well, we got to be very clear about something as it relates to black people. There's no way that the Hotep side of black consciousness, the Hotep hustling side of black consciousness, could be as successful as it is if that's not all black people want it. It's the same thing when you talk about the black church. And we don't put all churches in the same category, but let's be honest, the black church hasn't really done much systematically to improve the conditions of black people. But the black church is as popular as ever. The mega church is one of the biggest investments for white banks in America, which is a contradiction in my opinion, because the same banks that are gentrifying the black community and redlining black homeowners are funding black churches. You see, so the Hotep hustling side, how does that differ from the black pimp pastor who's collecting millions every Sunday but gives the black community very little on its return? So let's be clear. The reason why you can have charlatanism in black leadership, the reason why you can have charlatanism in a black church, the reason why you can have charlatanism in the black conscious community is because most black people are not interested in doing work. If all I have to do is show up, listen, and pay, which is what you do in church, which is what you do with Hotep hustling, then that's all I want to do. You understand? It's a way to massage my belief that I'm actually doing something for my people without actually doing it.
And at the same time, when you look back to the comparison to the civil rights era, people ask all the time, well, why do we learn so much about Dr. Martin Luther King?
Because he did work.
Well, because he did work, but also because that's what they want you to know about. They gave him a holiday because that's what they want you to know about.
But they fought against that holiday, though.
Yeah, they fought against the holiday, but
they control the narrative of Dr. King.
See, they turned Dr. King into a cartoon character. They turned him to a Disney character.
And into a passive.
I'm just gonna lay here and wait for the white man to stomp on me and hope that
they don't give you the Dr. King that lived the last 18 months of his life, okay, who really represented the motive behind his assassination. The Dr. King who talked about economic empowerment. They don't give you that.
And pushing further, even if you look at the I Have a Dream speech, it wasn't even called the I Have a Dream speech. It was a speech about a promissory note that the United States government wrote us that came up insufficient funds. It was about the fact that the United States had not economically supported the African American community, that they did not live up to what they told us they were going to do, and therefore we were making a mass march to push for and to petition for our actual rights. So you take the ruling class and they take that speech and they turn it into what they want it to be. And they turn it from a speech about what the government needs to do for black people into I have this wonderful dream about us staying. It was a rhetorical flourish at the end of a speech. So this is why this month we're going to have Dr. King Day. Next month we're going to have Black History Month. And they're going to do the same Black History fairy tale that I've been telling y'all about for 5 years now, where they make it seem like everything is wonderful and beautiful and all racism was solved by Barack Obama being president. But what they're not going to do is talk about Stokely Carmichael. They're not going to talk to you about Kwame Ture, Kwame Nkrumah. They're not going to talk to you about genocides on the continent. They're not going to talk about the beers.
They only emphasize black leaders and activists who have a narrative that can be reinterpreted in such a way that reinforces the American social paradigm. If your message cannot be molded at all within the American status quo's social paradigm, then they won't make use of you. Malcolm X is an example. Marcus Garvey is an example. Mr. Elijah Muhammad is an example of leaders who you'll have a very difficult time trying to make it look as if they espouse the mainstream Eurocentric capitalist narrative of the American society.
And on that same point, that if they cannot change your message, they demonize your message.
Yes.
We've taken Malcolm X down to just saying by any means necessary. That's the only thing he said in his entire life. Years of speeches going to the continent, 3 different names, everything.
But see, that's also why we do need the black consciousness movement. See, that's one of the benefits of the street corner scholar, because they have done a lot without the doctorate degree. They have done a lot to wake up and redirect brothers and sisters. That's one of the positives of it, that you can get that information from self-trained brothers and sisters on the local level who can turn you in a direction that you need to go. But again, coming back to what you say, where is the political economic accountability for those who stand on the soapbox?
Yeah, and we have to go to a break and so, but Cornelius on Facebook had a great question. He posted like 10 of them, but he had one good one, which is, I'm going to edit a little bit, who can be conscious?
I think everyone can. And I'm going
to pose this a little bit because we're got to go to a break.
Sure.
But, people act like if you're black and conservative, you can't be conscious.
Okay.
If you're black and Republican, you can't be conscious. If you're black and gay, you can't be conscious. If you're black and a feminist woman, you can't be conscious. As if consciousness is only defined and only embodied in the alpha black male who is also socially progressive and then liberal but conservative at times, it's in the Hotep Hustler movement, they like to exclude. It's a big exclusionary process. There's a whole list of people who are not allowed to be conscious because what you are by your very name, you can't be trans and conscious. You can't be, you can't have XYZ and be conscious. So when we start excluding people, it starts limiting the economics of our struggle. It starts limiting the manpower of our struggle. If you all of a sudden say that every gay person cannot be conscious, well, then that limits our manpower, especially in Atlanta, for the people who are going to show up at the rally.
Let's talk about that. I have some statements on that on the other side.
All right, so we're going to go to a break. Call in. I know some of you have been on, let's see, hour 35 minutes, hour 45 minutes, hour 15 minutes, hour 12 minutes. So, yeah, when I tell y'all to call in, I am going to actually get to you guys. Believe me, calling 404-892-2703. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. We'll be back after the break. Welcome at News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Still here with Dr. Umar Johnson. Dr. Umar.
Yes, sir.
So who is allowed to be part of the conscious community? You know, can you be a Republican? Can you be gay? Can you be trans? Can you be a feminist? Who's allowed to be in the party?
I think black consciousness is an umbrella under which exists all the different political and ideological nations that are out there. So, for example, I cannot deny anyone their black consciousness because consciousness is purely awareness. Barack Obama may be conscious, but he ain't committed to black folks. So for me, being conscious is a general term that speaks to an intellectual understanding of the black reality. So, for example, someone says black people got the same opportunities as white people. We have no excuse to be having 75% of our homes being single-led by women. There's no excuse for us to have 50% of our black men unemployed. There's no excuse for us to have the highest dropout rate. There's no excuse. That's unconsciousness because you're not understanding the forces that are at work that create those type of disproportionate statistics, okay? But for someone who's in the know, they're conscious. But for me, I have to discriminate and delineate between being conscious and being committed. There's a lot of black consciousness is a religion. It's just like church. Can't nobody tell you you're not a Christian. Can't nobody tell you you're not a Muslim. That's between you and your God. Can't nobody tell you you're not conscious. That's between you and your ancestors. But what they can say is you ain't a committed Christian. You don't get down when we out here serving these homeless people. You don't get down when we out here cleaning up these streets. Can they say that you're not committed? Yes, because commitment is judged by action. Consciousness is an intellectual phenomenon. You cannot judge that externally. Commitment can be judged, which is why I like to say I don't just belong to the black consciousness community. More than that, I belong to the concerned and committed black community.
All right, going to go to the phone line. Some of you have been on hold for almost 2 hours. We have who is this? Wes in Norcross on line 3. Wes?
Hey, good afternoon there, Patello and Dr. Johnson, man. I love you, my brother. And please, my brother, it's for me too, all us in the struggle. Going forward, 2017. The fight is not with our brothers, the fight against this white supremacy. So please, Dr. Johnson, under no circumstances, my brother, I love you, man. Don't let no brother, no black man, drop you down from where you up there where you at, man. You got to stay up, my brother. I'm lifting you up. Okay, this is real love, man.
Appreciate you, Baba. Appreciate you.
I swear I love you, man. Cause you know what I love you. What you said, I heard you say, if you black and married to white folks, you ain't real, man. I love you for that,
right,
man. You real. And to my brother Patillo, you said something about you made something about a statement about voodoo in a derogatory way. My brother, if it wasn't for voodoo, them Haitians would have kicked Napoleon out of Haiti.
Remember, brother, was my family's from Haiti. My mom was born in Haiti. So when I talk about voodoo, remember what we're really talking about is science, mathematics, and medicine that white people didn't understand. Arthur C. Clarke's second law of science fiction is that any sufficiently advanced science or technology or medicine will be seen as magic by people who don't understand it. If you took an iPhone to somebody 100 years ago, they would swear that it was magic. So when those Europeans got to Haiti, when they got to the Congo, when they got to West Africa, and they saw, well, I thought he was dead yesterday. Well, we gave him some medicine and he's back now. They just called it magic and witchcraft.
So to clarify for me, because I'm a big supporter of African spirituality, you are not making a derogatory remark.
No, not derogatory. I'm not
okay.
making anything derogatory at all. But the point that I was making is that these people didn't understand it.
Yes, sir. And see, Patillo, you know me and you done talked before about how these frequency and vibration is on the planet, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's why you saying something about the music. They dropped the music
from 520 hertz down to 440 hertz. That's why it's not no religion. It's all God is the high vibration, high frequency. That's the point I'm trying to make to everybody on this phone call that's still listening to me right now, including Brother Umar. We got to try to get that vibration up to the most high Yah. So no matter what, especially my brother, somebody look like me, they can call me anything I want because it's all 10% what happened to me and 90% how I react. I was on hold for over an hour. I could have reacted all kind of stupid. I was going to say stupid stuff, but I keep like to stay high, man. That's what I'm trying to get to all my brothers and sisters now. It's time. 2017, we got to raise up.
All right, thank you, Wes. All right, we got Jihad on line 5. Jihad?
Hey, good evening, brothers.
Peace and love.
Good. Two things, if I might. Brother Patillo, the hotel brother, I think Mr. Umar Johnson mentioned it. These brothers, who's to say 3, 4, 5 years from now? Because I'm pretty sure Mr. Johnson didn't start out initially with his the success of his program. Like he said, it's a second anniversary, third anniversary. To my knowledge, he's been out here talking a long time. So the hotel brothers, as you call them, they are responsible for the new interest in black history. It's not the school system. It's not the so-called legitimate scholars that you all talk about. It's the hotel brothers that these young people have tuned into, who, even though they might not have may not have a program, may not have a program, but they excite the interest. And most of them do point to some type of book or some type of research where one could go and either find out if their research is true or their research is false. So I would really temper my critique of the hotel, or whatever you call them, whatever you call them. The bottom line is, I'm saying that they play a major role and they play a part. And then 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, maybe sitting down listening to Mr. Johnson and others, they'll progress and move to the point that we want them to be at the end.
But Jihad, this is my issue that I have with the hotel hustlers. One,
but I agree with him.
Yeah, I agree with
I agree with
what you're saying. But when these individuals just are using it to line their own pockets, when they're doing just like the preachers, the pimp preachers are doing, and perverting the word of God for their own pockets, they're doing just like the Reverend Pork Chop civil rights leaders, and just using what they're following to line their own pockets versus actually pushing actual history, actual facts, actual things that will benefit you. I saw we were driving in the car down from New York, and I was watching some YouTube videos in the car, and somebody calling him the General something was saying how you were going to have a black revolution and how we were going to start killing white people and doing this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, 13% of the population? And they got atomic bombs and airplanes and everything else, and you're talking about actual physically going out and shooting people? That's not a movement that's actually productive to black folks. That's actually something that's going to get us all killed. So we have to separate them just having influence from them actually providing a positive message.
One of the brothers asked you earlier to name, and you said you didn't want to name. So see, clearly when you name this particular general or whoever that particular person is, now the intellect of our people can measure what you just said and see whether or not this particular brother's information is viable to our progress and to our existence. But you didn't name the people. So like Steve said, it was like a blanket indictment on the Hotep community, and you really had the conscious community, and one would really have to decipher, figure out how they're going to decipher, is Mr. Johnson one, is Dr. Nobles one, is SETI one, or these other people one. I mean, there's a bunch of the brothers online attempting to do something, but when you refuse in your initial position to name who you were specifically talking about and then put their platform before the public, generally speaking, from the beginning, we was ready to jump on all the Hotep community.
Well, look, the whole thing is you need to get out there and find out who's real and who's fake. Think about it critically. Analyze it. Find out if there's scholarship behind it. Find out if there's history behind it. Find out if there's a program and facts behind it. Don't just think that just because someone is saying something is true.
We agree with that.
All right, we got to go to a break, but thanks so much for your call, Jihad.
Thank you, brother.
All right, News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Ross Marvin from the United Negro Improvement Association Atlanta chapter is going to join us after the break. Still, Dr. Umar Johnson is going to be here with us. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back, News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. Still here with the Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. Umar Johnson. Also joined by, if you're in Atlanta, you know this man. If you're a part of the conscious community, the Pan-African community, the Hotep community, the Black Hebrew Israelite community, if you hang out on Abernathy at the Shrine of Black Madonna, you know this man. It is Ross Marvin in studio. Ross Marvin, how are you?
Great, Attorney Petulia. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. This is how I like to kick off the year.
Okay.
Because I think in 2017, with Donald Trump coming into office, black folks are losing their crutch. Because our crutch for the last 8 years has been Obama. We've thought, well, America can't be that racist. We got Obama. We have thought to ourselves, well, what's the worst that could happen? We got a black president. That would be the response to everything. Now our crutch is gone. We have got the complete opposite, the antithesis of Obama and Donald Trump. And so because of that, people are going to have to depend on themselves, depend on their communities, depend on their families, depend on their organizations. And with that, I think there's actual opportunity for growth because with this increased level of consciousness that we are in it for ourselves and of ourselves, people are going to actually have to do things and not just wait for someone else to do it for them. So in this, going into 2017, going into this new era of black consciousness, black thought, what do you think we need to do to address this, what I've been calling throughout the show, the Hotep hustlers, the people who peddle this fake Pan-Africanism, this fake ideology, this fake knowledge, which is only meant to line their own pockets, only meant to get them to have a conference, to get them to sell T-shirts on Etsy, to get them to have more views on YouTube. What can we do to separate those from the people who are actually doing things in the community like yourself?
Well, greetings, family, and glad to be back on WAOK. And Attorney Petilio, thank you for inviting me back forward again. My name is Ross Marvin, and I'm the local president for the Dr. Julius Nyeri CBPM UNIACL, Atlanta Division 421 here in Atlanta, and also the design engineer for the Collective Black People Movement. So to answer your question and to address your question, Attorney Petillo, as I see it, everybody has a purpose. That's what I'm saying. Everybody serves a purpose, and what we got to realize as African people is that we've been completely separated. And separated, we don't have no power, but when we come together, we become powerful. So I look at it from the perspective of an engineer that everybody serves his purpose, and we got to rebuild back this body, this one body. Unification is something that has to be built. It won't happen by magic. And what we have to understand is that they kept something from us, Attorney Petillo, and they kept us from us. Anything you want to do in the world, you can read it in a book, How to Do It, or anything that has to be done in the world, there's a profession that does it. And what we need amongst the Pan-Africanist community is we need the profession of the creators and the designers, the people who can take 40 million black people and put it together in a way that it automatically uplifts us as a people. And it takes an engineer. Those are the people that build things and create things. Because as I see it, if man can build a rocket to reach in space, then we black people can definitely build unification. It's not as difficult. But what we have to realize is that what everybody is saying positive and what everybody is doing positive, it's all part of the solution. And we got to put it back together. In other words, there's over 1 million things that we have to do as African people. But 75% of these million things fall underneath the top 50 different areas of our people's skills, talents, and intelligence. So when we organize ourselves as African people, as Dr. Umar said several times during this program earlier, that we have to organize ourselves and come together. When we organize ourselves, we'll see that we'll be able to come up with positive plans and how to address the things then that affect us based upon organizing us by our skills, talents, intelligence, because the top 50 different areas of our people's skills, talents, intelligence covers over 75% of the million things that we have to do as a people. And we have experts in different areas. So we got to get all the experts who are educators together. We got to get all the computer people together. We got to get all the scientists together, and they got to come up with plans and do it like how our great leaders did it before, the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, who developed a plan for us as African people, one of the greatest organizers. And one thing we're forgetting is that the highest form of self-determination is we operating in our own government as African people.
And on that point, what I think one of the risks that we have, one of the scary parts that happens is, we'll be right out there in the West End in the park, and you'll have all these soapbox preachers. These people who are preaching they'll preach revolution, which is like candy. They'll preach, well, we need to get out here with guns, we need to have armed conflict, which doesn't actually lead to anywhere. That has nothing to do with governance. That has nothing to do with education. That has nothing to do with healthcare. But they feed this candy to people, which gets them all riled up. But then there's nothing behind it. There's no organization. There's no pedagogy behind it. So how do we combine the enthusiasm that comes from giving people the candy with the wheat, with the vitamins, with the minerals that comes from actual organized plans and leadership?
As I say, without a plan, then we plan to fail. And the engineers of our people have to come together, the leaders of our people, those who are the well-educated and those who are concerned about the whole, and will put their personal desire to the back burner and focus on service of our people to the whole. So as I say, with over 40 million black people here in the United States, we have the biggest business in the world as black people, but we got to put it together. Our business is bigger than CNN, bigger than Fox, bigger than all of them together, because there's over 1.8 billion African people worldwide. Engineers are people who can organize this information and put it together that automatically it will end up to be positive growth for us as a people. For example, with the collective black people movement, we've been able to build a machine that automatically gathers our people from around the country and from around the world. And every day and every week, we have over 3,000 brothers and sisters that come there and share information, get information, because it's about putting back the pieces together and building that one unified body of us as a people. Brothers and sisters, if you want to see the works that we do, you can Google search black organizations. You'll see us on the front page. You can Google search anything relationship to black. You'll see us there. Because the reason why we're there is because there's over 1,400 pages of information on African people. And there's over tens of thousands of brothers and sisters being promoted there that's doing positive stuff for us as African people from A to Z.
All right, and
I would add to that, if I can, to piggyback on what my elder said. Within the conscious community, some people are bridges, but the organizations are destinations. And so even if they do not have a plan yet, they may have the ability to articulate a certain level of consciousness that catches the attention of another brother or sister who's trying to find themselves. And although they may not have the answer, they may be the bridge to begin there. I mean, there's a lot of people who end up at one place but began somewhere else. For some of us, an organization is a bridge. For others, it's a home. For some of us, a certain personality may be a bridge. For others of us, it is a home. So even in their misguidedness, they may be rightly guiding brothers and sisters, not to themselves, but onward and upward to other places. For example, people going to church, not to knock the church. Sometimes them going to church can be the best thing to bring them to black consciousness, because they go and see what is not there. You understand? Sometimes going to one event is the best thing for them to end up elsewhere. So for me, I think a positive can always come out of something that appears to be a negative if that person is a deep thinker. If they have their own mind, they will ultimately end up where they need to be.
All right, we got to go to a break, but after break, I'm going to leave you guys with a question now and give you a couple minutes to ponder on it, which is, how do we, in 2017, turn words to action? How do we do like everyone else does, which is actually execute these things and not just sit around doing the intellectual masturbation, as you said, self-gratifying without no positive or actual results coming out of it. So what do we need to do in 2017 in this era of Trump, in this new world order that we're entering into in order to do so? Getting into the final stretch, it is hustle time. Call in 448-922-2703. News and Talk 1380 WAOK. Welcome back, News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. But still in studio, we have Ross Marvin from the Atlanta chapter of the UNIA and also Dr. Umar Johnson. Before the break, I posed this question of how do we turn words into actions for 2017? I feel like we've been talking about these things since 1917 with Marcus Garvey. And so in 2017, 100 years later, how do we actually turn these things into some actual effective strategy, effective organization? How do we get something tangible out of what we've been talking about?
I'm going to start off, and I'm going to let my elder conclude it. First, let's look at the statistics. $600 million is what we spent this year on McDonald's, $2 billion on Air Jordans, $4 billion on alcohol, $9 billion on weave and perm. We bought 3 times as many Mercedes Benzes as white folk, but we only control 1/3 of the wealth that they control. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Christmas bill was $3 billion. Detroit Christmas bill was $4 billion. New York City's black Christmas bill this year was $8 billion. So for me, when we talk about what we need to do next, going back to the Garvey program, Mr. Garvey, around the time of his death, was working on a central black bank to finance the infrastructure for the black community and the government of African people. I think that's where we go next. It only costs $250,000 to start a credit union. You can start a small bank with $1 million. I think we have to change the narrative in the black community that says the black church is the center of black life. I disagree with that now. The black church is still important, but it can no longer be the center. Because although they have churches in white neighborhoods, and although they have churches in Chinese communities, they're Christians too, they're Muslims too, okay? They have the synagogues in the Jewish neighborhood. But their religious institution is not necessarily the center. Their financial institution is. We have to ask the question, what is more sacred, the bank or the church? What is more sacred, the school or the prayer house? When you build a bank, you can build infrastructure for that entire community. It is the bank that creates the community, not the church. And with black people putting $14 million in the church every Sunday, today's Sunday, and this is a New Year's Sunday. So I would believe that we probably put in more than $14 million a day, probably twice that amount. And we get very little on our return. So not to slight the church at all, but I believe that going into the next year, the banking and building banks and credit unions is where we should be putting our muscle at. Because as Mr. Garvey said, we can only save our people through a solid economic foundation. If you cannot feed, clothe, or house African people, why are we expecting them to be loyal to us? We have this house Negro phenomenon. We have this sellout thing. Why do African people have more sellouts than any other community in America? Because we're the only community who does not provide for its own. It's easy to be loyal when your people look out for you. A Chinese kid is going to love China. Chinese look out for them. A Jewish kid is going to love Israel. The Israeli community looks out for them. An African-American child is likely to end up being loyal to any other community but his own because we don't hire him, we don't educate him, we don't employ him, we don't empower him, we don't protect him from the police, we don't protect him from miseducation. So I believe that the narrative must go away from religious empowerment to economic empowerment.
All right, Ross Marvin, you get to follow that up. I'm going to shut up.
Yes, well, definitely the economics and the financial aspect is important because every 24 hours there's $8.1 million not being collected by African people in the United States of America. And how do I come up with that? Every 24 hours? Simple, brothers and sisters. 27 cents is something that most of us as adults have in our pocket by the end of the day. We raise the consciousness of our people to put down 27 cents each day. And there's over 40 million black people in America, and we use 30 million African people putting down 27 cents each day turns out to be $8.1 million every 24 hours. But to answer your question before the break, how do we connect our people to the works that has to be done? How we do that, my brother and sisters, is that we have to have a plan. And in this plan, as I was breaking down earlier, with the million things that African people have to do, we have to realize that in any area of life that we need works done, we have somebody black who can do it. Our people are excelling on all levels of skills, talents, intelligence. So we need to organize ourselves and see what we're working with as African people. And people can only be connected with the works that they know how to do. So in this survey, we take a survey and we find out, well, I'm into media. Well, I'm into spirituality. Well, I'm into this and I'm into that. And then in these 50 areas, as I said earlier, 75% of the million things black people have to do fall underneath the top 50 different areas of black people's skills, talents, and intelligence.
All right, going to go to the phone lines. We have Jahavi on line 2. Jahavi?
Hey, how y'all doing, brothers? How you doing, Dr. Umar?
Peace and love, family.
Hey, man, I just really want to tell you I really respect what you do. I'm 27. I'm a young brother in Atlanta. And I'm just on fire about our community. I'm on fire about the knowledge. I'm on fire just for seeing us progress. I have a question about just what can you tell young brothers who can't have that instant access to you, who on fire like me? I'm with 4 brothers right now, and like we just found anything we can do to get to this radio station. So how do we connect, and how can we get somebody like you all the time at our access? You know what I mean? To just keep the movement going and help our communities and help our families out, to be that person in our family. So what do we need to do and what steps do we need to take?
Well, one of the things that I'm going to be doing in the new year, and I'm going to give you my number in a second, so be ready for that. But one of the things I'm going to be doing in the new year is I'm going to start hosting retreats for brothers at different age levels. So in addition to the college tour, I'm going to do a retreat for brothers who are between 11 and 17. Then there'll be a retreat for brothers between 18 and 25. And then I'm going to do another retreat for brothers between 25 and 40, and then one for the elders as well. So we can sit down and talk, and then also work on some of the issues that we individually and collectively have to deal with as black men. I'm also going to start doing a conference call once a month for black men, where we all just get on there and talk Facebook Live as well as on the telephone, and we can just build as brothers. What city are you in, if I can ask?
I'm in Union City right now, but I do work. I'm also a basketball coach at Southwest Atlanta Christian Academy.
Okay.
My brother actually he plays with the Hawks right now.
Okay.
Dwight Howard.
Gotcha.
So I'm in the community, and like I said, I'm on fire for it. And I'm dedicated. Like I said, I'm dedicated, brother. And you motivate me, so that's what connected me to give you this call. So
no problem. Let me give you my number and send me a text, and I'll reach out to you. Area code, and this is for anyone listening. You can text me. Area code 215-989-9858. Again, 215-989-9858. So shoot me a text and I'll reach you. You can also get me through the website, drumarjohnson.com, drumarjohnson.com. And I'm getting a lot of texts about tickets. The tickets are sold out for the day. However, at 7 p.m., Sister Nisa Shabazz, who's operating the event for me today down at the Shrine, if we still have seats available at 7 p.m., we will take some cash paying customers today. But as of right now, it's sold out, but you can check back at the front door at 7 o'clock.
All right. Thanks so much, Jahavi. And Dr. Umar Johnson does indeed answer his text messages. That's how he's on the show today. So just know that is not a fake number. He really does answer.
Yes,
so final stretch into the last 15 minutes of the show. Call in 448-922-703. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community. All right, everybody, we're into the final stretch, last segment of the show. Keep your comments to 1 minute for Dr. Umar Johnson and also Ross Marvin. We're going to go to John in Orlando. John?
Yes, hello. I just want to say that the whole point of Pan-Africanism is for us as African people to realize that our salvation is in our unity with one another, and that we should be all, as African people, working to strengthen Africa because it strengthens us throughout the world. Now, I am a 6th grade social studies teacher. We're getting ready to do the unit on Egypt. Hello?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, we're getting ready to do the unit on Egypt. I have already established in my 6th grade social studies class with a diverse group of people that the Paleolithic and Neolithic man were African people. Okay? Now I'm getting ready to establish that the ancient Egyptians were actually African. And my overriding question is going to be to them, what does it mean when somebody steals your identity, and why would somebody steal your identity? Before I even get into that, then I'm going to show them where Brother Mustara Hefni says that he is a black Egyptian, and how the government wanted him to deny his blackness and say that he's white. So I'm just saying, and this is in the public school system. And in addition to that, for Black History Month, my little sixth graders are going to have to research the cultures of Cuba, Puerto Rico, Haiti, African Americans, show the relationship between those cultures and how that relates back to Africa. So you can fight wherever you are. And as a Pan-Africanist, hey, let's get off of this, work towards Africa, and unify. Lastly, everyone, go to the African Union Commission Chair, State of the Continent, December 19th, 2016. And then once you see that, you will say the hell with Trump, the hell with Hillary. Because in Africa, they are getting ready to open up a space college that's dedicated to space. We got to be able to get our children from here into those colleges, into the STEM college that they are getting ready.
All right, John, we got to move it.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, I'd like to respond to him.
Go ahead.
Let him know that, my brother, they've been stealing what African people have been doing for a long, long time, and they ain't going to stop doing it. What it's about what do we have as African people? And when we come to self-reliance, that means we have to build for ourselves and create for ourselves. And that's what time it is, because as long as we don't have nothing, they'll keep on disrespecting us.
Absolutely.
And I want to add, if I can, briefly, because we've been dealing with the Pan-African piece, and one thing we didn't cover was what exactly it is, okay? And, of course, that's the whole show, but I just want to give people 4 quick principles, okay? And Ross and myself were both Garveyites, so we represent, I would say, an elite branch under the Pan-Africanist umbrella. Number 1, Pan-Africanism is the belief that all people of African descent are members of one family. We're one, light-skinned, dark-skinned, Muslim, Christian, whether you speak in English or Igbo or Swahili or Zulu, one family. Number 2, we identify on the level of race first. That means we're African first. Our religion is not more important than our race. Our fraternity is not more important than our race. For the Pan-Africanists, we are race first. I'm an African who happens to be a Christian. I'm never a Christian who happens to be an African. Number 3, we believe that as Africa goes, so goes the rest of us. We would say that the reason why Black America and Black Canada and Black Britain has not made more progress in the past 50 years is because our political economic struggle is disconnected. It is disconnected from the motherland. Marcus Garvey said a strong man is strong everywhere. Chinese are respected wherever they go because China is strong. Arabs are respected wherever they go because Arabia is strong. The European Jew is respected wherever he goes because Israel is strong, and the black man is disrespected everywhere we go because Africa is not strong. As the mother, so goes the children. And the last principle of Pan-Africanism, I would say, is self-determination. What is to be done for African people must be done by African people. Taking handouts from the government, looking for what you want to say, concessions from either Obama or Trump. Is it going to benefit us? Because the hand that pays is the hand that rules. And one of our biggest problems as a people is we continue to look for outside financial support for things that we need to do ourselves.
All right. Dr. Johnson, we had a question on social media. Someone was asking, can you tell them about your educational background, and your degrees and all that
Let me do that. And the reason that question is being asked is because one of my attackers has alleged that I did not have the credentials that I had. So that's where this is coming from. So my undergraduate degrees, which are 3, I got from Millersville University of Pennsylvania, a Bachelor of Science in Political Science and a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. I also earned my first master's in school psychology from Millersville University. This is Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My second master's degree was from Lehigh University in Bethlehem, PA. That's in educational leadership, and I have a principal certificate along with that. My third master's and my doctorate are both from the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine in Philadelphia. It's an American Psychological Association approved program, one of the top programs on the East Coast. And if anyone questions my credentials, they can call the white universities, all 3 of them, and ask the white people if I have my paperwork.
All right. We're going to try to get one more call in before the break. We've got Pierre from Indianapolis who has been on hold for 2 hours and 41 minutes and 40 seconds. Pierre.
Three quick points. First point is you give those callers from Boston and whatever, you give them whole sections, man, and that's too much time.
You got to call in early. You got to call in you got to call like 12:50.
I was one of the first callers, but moving on. Second point, I disagree with the doctor. The black church, since we got here off the boat, has been the central force in moving African Americans forward in this country. And I would challenge him to look at the black diaspora throughout the world, Brazil, Europe, anywhere. And African Americans are by far doing better than anybody else. And what we need to do is rally around the black church, wherever your church is or whatever kind of church it is, and uplift our people. You can't build a community around a bank. Please. And that's just one of the things I said. And
communities are built around banks every day. In fact, when they want to gentrify black community, the first thing they do is bring in a bank and finance all the institutions that go around it. And I agree with you that for the first 200 years, the black church was our foundation. But in the past 50 years, the black church has not done anything of substance since Dr. King's murder to change the political economic reality of black folk. If you're telling black people that the black church is our salvation, we will have no salvation. $14 million every Sunday, no supermarket. $14 million every Sunday, no schools. $14 million every Sunday, no manufacturing sector. $14 million every Sunday, no import-export industry. Give me a break. Give me a break. All the money we give the church and we don't have no infrastructure, that is absolutely unacceptable. Creflo Dollar just got a $32 million jet. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Pierre, we're at a show.
With a white Jesus on top of that. Are you kidding me?
We're at a show. We're at a show. I should have done that earlier. That was entertaining. All right. So Ross Marvin, Dr. Johnson, give out your contact information, how people can get in contact with your organization. We have about 2 minutes left in the show, so I'm going to start with Ross Marvin and with Dr. Johnson.
And that's why I was telling you before, Attorney Patillo, that there's not one solution, but everything that we're doing is needed, from the banks, the spirituality, the education, and we got to see what we're working with. But you can get in touch with Ross Marvin through the Collective Black People Movement website, www.cbpmcollectiveblackpeoplemovement.org, and you'll see the documentation and the gathering that we've been doing. Definitely visit the CBPM Georgia page, cbpm.org/Georgia, and you'll see hundreds of brothers and sisters doing different things from A to Z to look out for us as a people, meaning that we're organizing ourselves. And also check out the Dr. Julius Nyeri, UNIA Division 421.
All right.
Dr. Umar Johnson. You can get me at the website, drumarjohnson.com. Email me, drumarjohnson@yahoo. That's DRUMAR Johnson. You can reach me at 8444-DRUMAR. That's 844-4-DRUMAR. Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Umar Johnson, and Facebook, Dr. Umar Ifatunde.
All right. I want to thank all of you so much. Got to thank Tap Production, the #1 video production and live streaming outlet in the city of Atlanta. Got to thank our producer, Darnell Morris, DJ Dirty D, for holding down on the ones and twos. Got to thank Gene Rosterboss for making all of this possible. I have to thank you, the WAOK listeners, because without you, I'm just a crazy person talking to a microphone. Got to thank our